The air was thick with dust, and the ground beneath Emma Clark's boots trembled from the explosions echoing in the distance. The battlefield was a graveyard of destroyed ships, burnt wreckage, and smoldering craters. Smoke rose from the remnants of the once thriving colony, a stark reminder of the destruction Grothak's forces had caused. This was it, the final stand. Emma, a seasoned soldier of the Earth Defense Force, crouched behind a pile of metal and debris, her rifle in hand. She had fought in countless battles before, but this one felt different. The weight of the entire human race seemed to hang on her shoulders. She was one of the last surviving members of her squad, and if they didn't stop Grothak here, humanity's future would be in jeopardy. She could hear the alien commander's voice from across the battlefield, booming over the loudspeakers, mocking them. "Humans are weak," Grothak's voice echoed, filled with laughter and arrogance. "You cannot win this fight. You can't even handle the recoil of your own weapons. How do you expect to defeat me?" Emma clenched her jaw, resisting the urge to snap back. She had heard it all before: alien species, one after another, underestimating humanity, calling them weak, fragile, or incapable. She knew what they thought of her people, and she hated it. But Emma wasn't going to let his words break her. This battle wasn't about power, it was about resilience. And humans had that in spades. She peeked over the edge of the wreckage, scanning the battlefield. The alien forces were closing in. Grothak was at the front of his army, towering over his soldiers. His massive body was covered in dark, shimmering armor, and his weapon, a massive plasma cannon, rested casually on his shoulder. He was the epitome of strength, the galaxy's most feared commander, and yet here was Emma, a lone human, standing in his way. Grothak caught sight of her, his eyes narrowing. "There you are, little human," he taunted, his deep voice like thunder. "The last of your kind, fighting for survival. How pathetic." Emma's grip on her rifle tightened. She had been preparing for this moment for weeks, and now she was face to face with the enemy who had destroyed so much of what humanity had fought to protect. There was no turning back. Taking a deep breath, she adjusted the sights on her rifle. She was outnumbered, outgunned, but she was not afraid. The rifle in her hands was built for heavy artillery, a weapon designed to handle recoil that would tear most humans apart. But Emma had trained for this. She had endured the hours of grueling practice, her body conditioned to withstand the force. She wasn't like the others who had laughed at humanity's weaknesses. She was ready. The commander's voice echoed through the air again, filled with cruel amusement. "Humans can't handle recoil, little soldier. Watch as you fall." Without a moment's hesitation, Emma stood up from behind the debris, aiming her rifle at the towering alien. Her hands were steady as she pulled the trigger, sending a high-powered shot toward Grothak. The recoil slammed into her body, but she didn't flinch. The shot hit its target, his energy shield, creating a ripple across its surface. Grothak's grin widened as he looked down at the small crack in his shield. "Is that it?" he mocked. "That was your best shot, human." Emma didn't respond. Instead, she dropped to the ground and rolled out of the line of fire, quickly reloading the rifle. The pain from the recoil was a dull throb in her shoulder, but she barely noticed it. The only thing that mattered now was staying alive and taking down Grothak. As she reloaded, she heard the commander's voice again, but this time there was a note of disbelief in it. You're still standing." Emma took a deep breath, her heart pounding, but her focus never wavered. She had to be smarter than him. It wasn't enough to just fire blindly. She needed to find his weakness to outthink him, and that meant patience. Grothak swung his massive cannon toward her, aiming to fire. Emma's pulse raced. He was about to unleash a barrage of energy that could obliterate everything in its path. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. She dashed behind a nearby tank, taking cover just as the plasma blast shot past her, the force of it scorching the ground where she had been moments before. The heat of it burned through the air, and the explosion rattled her bones, but she stayed focused. Now it was time. She peeked out, waiting for the right moment. The commander was distracted, the barrel of his cannon still smoking from the blast. She didn't have much time. Emma aimed carefully, once again taking a shot at the weak point of Grothak's armor, the one spot where the shield didn't extend. This time her shot connected, piercing through the outer layer of his armor. Grothak let out a roar of frustration and pain, staggering back. The blow had shaken him, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. But Emma wasn't finished. She knew exactly what to do next. The battlefield was chaos. Explosions continued to rock the ground beneath Emma's boots, the sky darkened by plumes of smoke and fire. The alien forces advanced, relentless and merciless, but Emma wasn't backing down. She had already struck a blow against their commander, Grothak, and she wasn't about to stop now. Humanity's survival was on the line. Grothak, his armor scorched and dented from Emma's earlier shot, roared in rage. His once imposing figure seemed smaller now, his arrogance replaced with something darker, frustration. He had expected the human to cower, to fail in the face of overwhelming power, but she hadn't. She had stood her ground, and with each second that passed, his confidence waned. "You think a single shot will defeat me?" Grothak bellowed, his voice thick with fury. He gripped his plasma cannon tightly, the weapon crackling with energy. "You are nothing." Emma didn't answer. Her hands were steady as she took another shot at his exposed armor. She had to be careful. She knew her rifle could damage his shield, but it wasn't enough to pierce his defenses entirely. She had to outsmart him, not overpower him. She wasn't stronger than Grothak, but she didn't need to be. She just had to be smarter. She glanced quickly at her team, hiding behind cover, waiting for her signal. They were injured, but they were still alive, and they were counting on her. She couldn't fail them. Grothak raised his weapon again, aiming directly at Emma's position. His eyes glinted with malice. "You won't survive this," he said, his voice thick with contempt. Emma gritted her teeth. The blast from the plasma cannon came next, and this time she wasn't fast enough to dodge. The heat of the blast scorched the air, sending a shockwave that knocked her off her feet. She landed hard, her body sliding across the charred earth. The impact left her breathless, and for a moment all she could hear was the ringing in her ears. She fought to get up, her vision blurry. Her shoulder burned with pain, the recoil from earlier starting to take its toll. She couldn't let Grothak see her weakness. She couldn't give him the satisfaction. Her rifle lay just out of reach, the weapon she had relied on so many times, but she wasn't about to let that stop her. She dragged herself to her feet, her legs shaking with exhaustion, and took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of the battle pressing down on her. The battle wasn't just about surviving. It was about showing the galaxy what humanity was capable of. She reached for her rifle, reloading it with quick, practiced movements. The recoil wouldn't stop her. She would reload without blinking. She would fire without hesitation. Grothak was getting closer now, his footsteps shaking the ground beneath her. He was confident now, believing that the human had been broken by the blast, but Emma wasn't finished. Not yet. She steadied her breath and aimed her rifle at his chest again, focusing on the weak point in his armor. Her pulse quickened as she squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, and for a brief moment time seemed to slow. The bullet struck, but the shield held firm. Grothak laughed, the sound echoing through the battlefield. "You cannot win, human. You cannot match my power." Emma's heart pounded, but she didn't show it. She reloaded, barely blinking. She wasn't giving up, not when humanity's future depended on it. She knew there was a way to do this, there had to be. She couldn't keep playing his game, waiting for the right shot. She needed to be smarter, to think faster. Grothak raised his weapon once more, aiming straight at her. Emma's eyes flicked to her team, still hiding behind the wreckage, too far to help. She was on her own. But then something caught her eye. The plasma cannon, though powerful, had a weak spot, just behind its barrel. A small gap in the armor, barely visible to anyone not paying close attention. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Emma's gaze locked onto the spot. This was it. If she could hit that tiny gap just right, the cannon's power source might overload. She crouched low, calculating her next move. The commander was coming closer, too focused on his victory to see her plan. She had only one chance. With everything she had, she aimed at the weak point. She pulled the trigger. The shot was precise, and the moment the bullet hit the target, she knew it had worked. Grothak's weapon exploded in his hands, sending him stumbling backward. The force of the blast knocked him off his feet, and his massive body hit the ground with a deafening thud. For a moment, the world stood still. The commander groaned, struggling to regain his footing, but it was too late. His weapon was destroyed, and his shield was down. He was vulnerable. Emma didn't hesitate. She ran toward him, closing the distance, her rifle aimed at his exposed side. She was breathing heavily, her body on the edge of exhaustion, but she couldn't stop. This was the moment she had been waiting for. With a final decisive shot, she ended it. Grothak's body collapsed to the ground, defeated. The enemy commander, once unstoppable, was now lying motionless, his reign of terror finally at an end. The battlefield fell silent, the dust and smoke hanging heavy in the air. Emma stood over the defeated form of Grothak, the massive alien commander who had brought so much pain to humanity. Her heart was still pounding, but the adrenaline of victory began to fade, leaving a hollow exhaustion that threatened to bring her to her knees. Grothak's plasma cannon lay shattered on the ground, its glowing core sputtering out of power. His massive, armored body was sprawled across the charred earth, his once imposing presence now reduced to a broken heap. For a moment, Emma couldn't believe it. She had done it. She had taken down the greatest enemy humanity had ever faced. But even as she stood there, her rifle still in her hands, Emma couldn't afford to relax. The war wasn't over yet. Grothak's forces were still out there, scattered across the battlefield, and they would come for her. They wouldn't just give up because their commander had fallen. They would fight until the last breath. She turned toward her team, still hiding behind the wreckage of a downed ship. They had been watching, waiting for her signal. But now, the moment of victory was clouded with the harsh reality of what came next. "Is it over?" asked Lieutenant Miller, his voice trembling with exhaustion as he emerged from behind cover, looking at the fallen commander with disbelief. Emma nodded, but her eyes never left Grothak's lifeless body. "Not yet," she replied. "We still have work to do." She could hear the sounds of alien troops moving in the distance, their growls and footsteps growing louder as they neared. The battle wasn't over. This was just the first part of the fight. Miller took a step forward, the weight of the situation settling over him. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Emma didn't answer immediately. She had a plan, but it wasn't going to be easy. She needed to act fast before the alien reinforcements reached them. The key to winning this fight wasn't just in defeating Grothak. It was in stopping the rest of his army from regrouping. If they could take control of the battlefield, they might have a chance to finally drive the aliens off their home planet. "Gather the others," Emma said, her voice calm but urgent. "We need to push forward. We have to keep them from reaching their command post." Without hesitation, Miller ran to gather the rest of the squad. Emma turned back to Grothak's body, her eyes narrowing. This was her moment. She had just faced the leader of the alien forces and survived. But if she let up now, it would be all for nothing. Her body ached, the pain from the earlier injuries, bruises, cuts, and burns pushing against her. But she didn't have the luxury of resting. She reloaded her rifle, the movements automatic, as she watched the sky darken with the smoke of war. She had come too far to stop now. A distant rumble filled the air, followed by the sound of alien engines. Their reinforcements were on their way. Time was running out. Emma pushed through the fatigue, focusing on the task at hand. She could feel the weight of the moment, but there was no room for fear. She wasn't alone. Her team was with her, and they would fight as hard as they could until their last breath. Moments later, the squad assembled, weapons at the ready, faces grim. They had all seen the devastation Grothak's forces had caused. Each of them had lost someone, and every one of them was determined to make sure that loss wasn't in vain. "Let's move out," Emma ordered. Her voice was sharp, the commander within her rising to the surface once more. "We'll push toward their command post. No one gets through, not one of them." With that, the team began to move, Emma leading the way. Her thoughts raced as she mentally mapped out the route. They had the element of surprise, but that wouldn't last long. The aliens would regroup, and when they did, they would come at them with everything they had. They had to strike first. They moved quickly, using the wreckage for cover as they made their way through the devastated battlefield. The sounds of the approaching enemy grew louder, but Emma refused to show fear. She had already taken down Grothak. She had already proven that humanity could stand against the odds. And now, it was time to prove they could finish what they started. As they approached the alien command post, Emma could see the enemy forces assembling, readying for their counterattack. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of what was to come. But her resolve never wavered. This was their chance to end the war. If they could destroy the command post and take out the remaining leadership, the aliens would be crippled. "On my signal, we push forward," Emma whispered to her team, her eyes scanning the enemy positions. "Stick together, no one falls behind." They were close now, too close to turn back. Emma's heart pounded as she raised her rifle. She wasn't just fighting for survival, she was fighting for humanity's future. With a deep breath, she took aim, ready to lead the charge. The air was thick with tension as Emma and her team approached the alien command post. The sounds of the alien forces preparing for battle filled the air, their alien tongues growling and their weapons clattering. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, the adrenaline of the earlier fight still coursing through her veins. She could feel her muscles aching, the exhaustion threatening to overtake her, but she refused to let it. Not now. not when the fate of humanity rested on this moment. "Stay low, move fast," Emma whispered to her squad, her voice sharp but calm. "We hit them hard, then we move before they can regroup." Her team nodded, their faces set with determination. They had been through hell together, and they weren't about to stop now. They knew the stakes. The fight wasn't just for survival, it was for the future, for everything they had lost. Emma led the way, her rifle raised, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. The command post was just ahead, a heavily fortified structure surrounded by alien soldiers. It was their last line of defense, and if they didn't take it out, the entire war would be lost. She ducked behind a fallen piece of metal, signaling her team to do the same. The enemy was only a few hundred yards away, and they had no idea the humans were coming for them. "We'll need to take out their communication tower first," Emma said quietly, her eyes scanning the battlefield. "That's their lifeline. If we can cut that off, they won't be able to call for reinforcements." The plan was risky, but it was the only option they had. If they could disable the tower, the aliens would be isolated. It would give them a chance to destroy the command post and finally end the war. Emma took a deep breath, adjusting her grip on her rifle. "On my signal, everyone ready." The squad nodded. There was no fear in their eyes, only resolve. They were in this together, and they would win together. "Now," Emma shouted, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. With that, the squad sprang into action, moving fast and low like shadows in the night. They moved toward the alien command post, darting from cover to cover, avoiding enemy patrols. Emma's pulse raced as she led the charge, her eyes never leaving the target ahead. The alien forces were still unaware of the attack. Emma could see the communication tower just ahead, guarded by 2 alien soldiers. It was a critical point in the plan. If they could disable it, they could stop the entire alien command structure from functioning. "On me," Emma shouted to her team. With precision, her squad stormed forward. 2 soldiers quickly took out the guards by the tower, their silent shots striking true. Emma's heart beat faster as she watched the team move into position. The communication tower was now vulnerable. "Clear the area," Emma ordered. "I'll plant the explosives." Her team quickly spread out, taking positions to cover her. Emma moved swiftly, planting the explosives at the base of the communication tower. She had done this 1,000 times before, planting charges, setting the timers. But this time there was something different. This time it wasn't just about a mission. This time it was personal. She pressed the final button and the timer began its countdown. 30 seconds. "Let's go," Emma yelled, signaling the team to fall back. They sprinted away from the tower, the weight of the explosives behind them growing heavier with every step. The alien soldiers were starting to realize what was happening, but it was too late. The team was already in motion, heading for the heart of the enemy's command post. Just as they reached the edge of the battlefield, Emma turned to look at the communication tower. A deafening explosion shook the ground, sending a massive shockwave through the air. The tower erupted into flames, and the alien forces shrieked in panic as their lifeline was destroyed. "That's it," shouted Miller, one of Emma's squadmates, his face lit up with a mixture of awe and relief. "We've done it." But Emma didn't have time to celebrate. The explosion had alerted the entire alien force. The command post was now fully aware of their presence, and they were mobilizing to defend it. "Keep moving," Emma barked. "We've got one shot at this. Stay close. We hit them now or we'll never get another chance." The squad pushed forward, adrenaline pumping, their rifles aimed and ready. As they neared the heart of the alien command post, Emma saw what they were up against. Alien soldiers, heavy artillery, and towering mechs, all lined up in defense. The enemy was preparing to make their last stand. But Emma wasn't afraid. She had faced worse, and she had survived. "On my mark," Emma shouted, her voice steady and full of authority. "When I say go, we rush them, no holding back." She could feel the weight of the moment in her bones. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was the fight that would decide the future of humanity. She had fought for this. She had lost friends for this. And now she would win. "Go," she shouted. The squad surged forward, charging toward the heart of the enemy's defenses. Emma's rifle fired, her shots sharp and focused, cutting down any alien soldiers that dared stand in their way. The rest of the team followed her lead, fighting with everything they had, determined to see this through to the end. The final battle had begun. The ground trembled beneath Emma's feet as she and her squad charged toward the heart of the alien command post. The roar of alien weapons and the shouts of battle filled the air, but Emma's focus never wavered. Her mind was sharp, every decision honed from years of combat experience. This was it, the final push. If they failed here, humanity's future would be extinguished, swallowed by the alien empire that had been ravaging their worlds for years. "Keep moving," Emma shouted to her team, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're almost there." She could see the alien forces now, mechs, armored soldiers, and alien creatures that towered over her, each one more terrifying than the last. But Emma wasn't intimidated. The human resolve had always been underestimated by their enemies. It was time to show them just how wrong they were. She fired her rifle, the recoil shaking her body, but it was nothing compared to the heat in her chest. The shot struck an alien soldier square in the chest, sending him flying backward. One down, but there were many more to go. "Clear the way," shouted Sergeant Miller, his voice filled with urgency. "We can't let them regroup." Emma nodded, giving him a brief glance, and they continued their advance. The rest of her team followed closely behind, providing cover fire. Each step brought them closer to the command center, an enormous, fortified structure bristling with alien technology and weapons. But the closer they got, the more the enemy pushed back, throwing everything they had at the humans. Alien ships swooped down from the sky, firing blasts of deadly energy. The ground exploded in front of them as alien artillery pounded the earth. "Watch your step," shouted Lieutenant Harper, pulling Emma to the side as a blast from a nearby turret sent debris flying. Emma grimaced as she regained her balance. They couldn't afford to slow down, not now. She had made it this far, and nothing was going to stop her from finishing this. She scanned the battlefield, looking for any weak points in the enemy's defense. The alien soldiers were retreating back toward the command post, regrouping behind shields and barricades. Emma spotted a gap, a narrow alley between two alien mechs, barely big enough to slip through. "Through that gap," she yelled, pointing to the opening. "We'll flank them." Her squad didn't hesitate. They sprinted toward the gap, weaving between enemy fire and explosions. Emma led the way, moving quickly, her rifle raised. She fired at any alien who dared step into her line of sight. The recoil of each shot hit her body, but her resolve was stronger than the pain. As they moved through the gap, they reached the enemy's perimeter defenses. The sounds of battle were deafening now, explosions, laser fire, and the shouts of soldiers from both sides. Emma's heart raced as she watched her team press forward, but the closer they got to the command post, the more intense the fighting became. Alien soldiers, now fully aware of their attack, poured out of the command center to engage. "Push forward," Emma commanded. "We've come too far to stop now." Her voice was sharp, but there was an undeniable urgency in it. The fate of their species rested on this fight. The enemy couldn't be allowed to regroup. The moment they stopped pushing, they would lose everything. They reached the entrance to the command post, and Emma slammed her shoulder against the door, knocking it open. Inside, alien officers scrambled to prepare for the oncoming assault, but they weren't ready for the human fighters. Emma didn't give them a chance to react. "Cover the door," she shouted to her squad as she stepped into the room, scanning for targets. Miller and Harper took position on either side, covering the door while Emma moved in, her rifle raised. The alien officers turned to face her, their eyes widening in surprise. They had expected the human forces to fall, but not her, not today. She fired, the shot hitting one officer square in the chest, sending him to the ground. Another alien soldier lunged at her, but Emma ducked, using the momentum to drive her elbow into his face. He crumpled to the ground, unconscious. A burst of alien energy whizzed past her, narrowly missing her head. She spun, taking cover behind a console, her rifle up and ready. The enemy forces were trying to regain control of the command center, but they were out of time. "Miller, Harper, get to the control panels," Emma shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to disable their systems. We can't let them call for reinforcements." Her team moved quickly, splitting off to disable the alien tech. Emma kept an eye on their backs, firing at any alien who got too close. She could feel the weight of the situation on her shoulders. This was the moment, the fight that would determine the future of humanity. "5 minutes," Emma muttered to herself as she moved to assist her team. 5 minutes until we either win or lose everything." Miller called out to her, his voice strained with effort. "It's almost done, Sergeant, just a little longer." Emma nodded, her eyes narrowing with determination. This was the final stretch. Her body was sore, her movements slow with exhaustion, but she kept pushing forward. The command post was nearly theirs, and she wasn't going to stop until it was. The door behind them slammed shut with a thunderous noise. Alien reinforcements were arriving, fast. The battle was about to become even harder, but Emma didn't hesitate. She knew they had one chance. This was humanity's chance to prove it was more than just a species in survival mode. It was time to show the galaxy that humanity would never back down. She smiled grimly, the adrenaline surging through her veins. "Let's finish this," she whispered. The hum of alien machinery filled the air as Emma stood over the now-disabled control panels of the alien command post. Her breath was shallow, and every muscle in her body screamed with exhaustion. Sweat dripped from her brow, mingling with the dirt and blood that stained her uniform. But she couldn't stop. Not now, not when they were so close to victory. She glanced at her squad, Lieutenant Miller, Sergeant Harper, and Corporal Brooks. They were all working quickly, disabling the remaining alien tech and setting charges. Every second counted, and Emma knew it. Alien reinforcements were on their way, and they had only a few minutes before the entire command post would be flooded with soldiers, ready to finish what Galactic had started. The doors to the command room shuddered, and a loud crash echoed down the hall. The sound of heavy boots marching in unison grew louder. Alien soldiers, the last of Galactic's forces, were closing in. "We're out of time," Miller said, his voice tense as he looked up from the control panel. "They'll be here in less than a minute." Emma didn't flinch. Her fingers tightened around her rifle as she scanned the room. "Get the explosives set," she ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. "We need to finish this now." The squad moved swiftly, preparing the final charges. Brooks worked quickly, securing the last of the explosives near the main reactor core, while Harper kept a lookout, her weapon raised. Emma's eyes flicked to the door. She could feel the tension building, the heavy silence before the storm. The alien forces were almost at the door, and if they didn't move now, they would be trapped. The door burst open. A flood of alien soldiers poured in, their weapons raised and firing before they even crossed the threshold. The room erupted into chaos as Emma and her team dove for cover. Plasma shots whizzed past them, scorching the walls and the floor. The aliens were fast and organized, but Emma's squad was faster. "Take them down," Emma shouted, her voice slicing through the noise of battle. She fired her rifle, taking down two of the aliens in quick succession. The recoil hit her, but she barely noticed. She had learned to ignore the pain. Miller and Harper followed her lead, firing relentlessly at the approaching aliens. Brooks, still by the reactor, set the timer on the final explosive and sprinted toward them, narrowly avoiding the blast of energy from one of the alien soldiers. The alien soldiers tried to advance, but Emma and her squad held their ground, their weapons blazing. For every alien they took down, two more seemed to take their place. It was as if Galactic had an endless supply of soldiers. But Emma didn't care. She wouldn't stop fighting until it was over. Another alien soldier charged at her, his plasma gun raised. Emma ducked behind a column, narrowly missing the blast. She didn't hesitate. She jumped out of cover, using the soldier's momentum against him. She kicked his legs out from under him and slammed her elbow into his face. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. But there was no time to celebrate. The battle was still raging, and more reinforcements were coming. "Harper, Miller," Emma shouted. "We've got to hold them off for just a few more seconds." The sound of a countdown filled the air. 10 seconds. The explosives were set and the countdown was almost at 0. Emma could feel the weight of it. The fate of humanity was in their hands. The alien soldiers were pushing harder now, their weapons targeting every inch of the room. But Emma wasn't about to let them win. She had come too far. With a battle cry, Emma fired at a group of advancing aliens, taking down one after another. Her rifle felt heavier, her movements slower, but she was still standing. She would stand until the very end. Brooks, his face grim with determination, shouted over the gunfire, 5 seconds. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. The countdown was almost over. They just needed to hold on a little longer. 3 seconds. She fired again, hitting an alien soldier square in the chest. He crumpled to the ground, but there was no time to focus on him. The countdown was reaching its final moments. 1 second. The explosion shook the room, sending a wave of heat and light through the air. The ground cracked beneath their feet as the alien command post erupted in a blinding flash. The blast was deafening, followed by a shockwave that knocked Emma off her feet. Her world spun, and for a moment everything was nothing but dust and smoke. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear her vision as the air settled. The command post was no more, the reactor core and all the alien technology reduced to rubble. The lights flickered and then went out entirely. "We did it," Miller said breathlessly, his voice barely audible over the ringing in Emma's ears. Emma slowly pushed herself up, her body protesting every movement. She looked around the room, taking in the destruction. The alien forces were no more. The last of Grothak's empire had crumbled in an instant. "We did it," Emma whispered, her voice filled with exhaustion, relief, and pride. "It's over." Her team gathered around her, weary but victorious. The war that had seemed endless, the fight that had taken everything from them, was finally over. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had defeated an empire, and they had done it together. Emma's heart swelled with pride for her team. They had faced impossible odds, and they had won. The galaxy would never forget the day that humanity stood tall against the most powerful empire in the universe. But Emma knew that this victory, though hard-earned, was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were more battles to fight. But for now, as she looked at her team, she allowed herself a brief moment of peace. They had done it. They had saved humanity. The smoke from the explosion slowly began to clear, leaving a scene of destruction and silence. Emma stood there, her rifle still in her hands, but now more as a weight than a weapon. The air was thick with the scent of burnt metal and the echoes of battle. She felt the heat of the blast still radiating from the wreckage of the alien command post, and the remnants of the battle still hung heavy in the air. Her team was gathering, their faces covered in dirt and sweat, their bodies showing signs of the fight they had just won. But there was no celebration. Not yet. The victory was still sinking in, and for Emma, it felt unreal. She had fought to the edge of her limits, and now, looking at the smoldering ruins of Grothak's empire, she couldn't believe it was finally over. She took a slow, steadying breath, her heart pounding in her chest. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving a hollow exhaustion in its place. The kind that settled deep in your bones. The war had cost so much. So many lives had been lost. Her mind drifted to the faces of the soldiers she had fought with. Some had made it, others had fallen along the way, but they had all believed in something greater. They had all believed that humanity could survive, that they could stand against the galaxy's greatest forces. And now they had. Miller approached her first, his eyes tired but grateful. "Sergeant, we did it. We actually did it." Emma gave a faint nod, her voice a little rough. "Yeah, we did." Harper came next, wiping dirt from her face with the back of her hand. "It's over. Grothak's gone. The command post's destroyed. They won't be able to regroup now." Emma's eyes shifted to the ruins of the command center, the alien technology scattered across the battlefield. The power had been broken. The war machine that had nearly wiped out humanity was now reduced to rubble. The hum of the enemy's weapons was gone, the constant pressure finally lifted. It was over. But even as relief washed over her, there was a sense of sadness, too. They had won, but at what cost? "How many did we lose?" Emma asked softly, her eyes scanning the remains of the battlefield. Harper's face tightened and she sighed. "A lot, too many, but we couldn't have done it without them." Emma closed her eyes, the faces of the fallen flashing in her mind. Each one had fought with the same purpose, the same fire in their hearts. They had all sacrificed for the chance to see this day, and now they were gone. She would carry them with her, their memory fueling her determination for the future. "Everyone who's left, gather around," Emma said, her voice strong now despite the exhaustion. She needed to do this, to remind them why they were here, why this moment mattered. The squad assembled around her, standing in a loose circle, their bodies weary but standing tall. Their faces, dirty and bruised, all had a look of quiet pride. They had done it. The impossible had become reality. Emma took a deep breath, looking at each one of them in turn. "You all showed the galaxy what humanity can do," she said, her voice steady and full of emotion. "When they said we were weak, that we couldn't survive, that we weren't worth the fight, we proved them wrong. We did what no one thought we could do. We took down the Emperor, we defeated Grothak, and we're still standing, together." There was a brief silence, and then Miller stepped forward. His voice was firm, unwavering. "We did it because we believed in each other. You led us, Emma. You gave us hope when we had none, and because of you, we're here today." Emma felt a lump rise in her throat, and for the first time since the battle had started, she allowed herself to feel it, the weight of their sacrifice, the loss, and the pride. They had fought so hard not just for survival, but for the chance to rebuild. "We fought as humans, not just soldiers," Emma said quietly. "We showed the galaxy that no matter how big the enemy, no matter how strong they think they are, humanity will never back down." The group fell silent again, the enormity of their victory settling over them. Emma's eyes shifted to the horizon where the sun was beginning to rise, casting a soft light over the battlefield. The day after the war, a new beginning. She had no illusions about what lay ahead. There was still so much to rebuild. The galaxy was broken, fractured, and humanity had its work cut out for it. But this was the first step, the first light after the storm. "We've got a long road ahead," Emma said, her voice quieter now but full of resolve. "But we've shown that we can do this, and we'll do it again together." Her team nodded in agreement. They had been through hell and come out the other side. Together they had accomplished the impossible. And now they would rebuild, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had ever been oppressed, for every world that had suffered under Grothak's regime. The battle for the galaxy wasn't over, but it was different now. Humanity had taken its place among the stars. And as Emma looked at her team, her family, she knew one thing for sure: they would never stop fighting.